Well, the biggest story in college football over the last few weeks was Pat Fitzgerald in Northwestern. There was a lot of alleged hazing and nonsense going on in practice, which ultimately led to him being suspended and eventually fired from the program. You can say or think whatever you want about the situation, but either way, the guy was fired. Now, there's a chance we could be headed into another big story in college football, but this time, it's a couple hundred miles north with PJ Fleck in Minnesota. Apparently, there is some alleged allegations against him and overall a toxic culture at Minnesota. In today's video, I'm going to bring you up to speed with everything going on in this situation, talk about my thoughts, talk about what has allegedly happened, and all in all, what will happen next for Fleck. But before we get started, quickly be sure to leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new and love college football content, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I could cover in my next one. Now, let's get started and talk about PJ Fleck. You're probably familiar with the phrase row the boat if you're a big college football fan, as that was coined to PJ Fleck. Growing up, he eventually got to Northern Illinois, where he played his college football, and also pretty much got his start in coaching. He also spent time at both Rutgers, Ohio State, and with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers before he took over as the head coach at Western Michigan. While he was there, he had his breakout 2016 season, had a top 5 draft pick in Corey Davis, and signed the best recruiting class in MAC history. Because of that, Minnesota decided they were going to move on to their next coach, PJ Fleck. This was after Jerry Kill had to retire, and then he would end up taking over in 2017. In his first year with the program, the team went 5-7, before in 2018 they'd have a late season comeback and make a bowl game and go 7-6. 2019 was the peak of the Fleck era so far, as they ended up getting off to a 9-0 start, but would finish 11-2, and were ranked as high as number 10 in the nation. 2020, they had a losing record at 3-4, and then in 2021 and 2022, they have gone 9-4. Now that pretty much the entire team is exhausted of eligibility, Fleck will have to figure out a new quarterback, a new running back, a new star receiver, and a new offensive line and defense. Basically what I'm saying is he was relying on guys with all those extra years, and we'll now get to see how his recruiting and player development actually is. But he may actually have bigger fish to fry. In a report today, it has now been said by former Minnesota players and staffers that there's a toxic culture under PJ Fleck. According to CBS, this is what they had to say. Former Minnesota football players described Coach PJ Fleck's program as a cult. The program's culture is fraught with intimidation and toxicity. Among the allegations are that Fleck interfered with medical protocols by seeking for injured players to return earlier than anticipated, and by minimizing the seriousness of pretty horrendous injuries. The story also details a system devised by Fleck called the Fleck Bank, in which players could rack up goodwill to circumvent the repercussions of failed drug tests and other violations. Minnesota Athletic Director Mark Coyle voiced his support for Fleck's program in a statement. He said, quote, "PJ and our program are unique, and they put themselves out there in new and different ways, but always in a first-class manner. And after nearly 7 years, it is clear to me that this is what makes PJ and our program so successful." Turning to my own opinion here, it is no secret that PJ Fleck's program has always been a cult. He has consistently talked about this row the boat stuff seemingly for a decade now, and all the players are always typically bought in and super united under Fleck. I don't think that just because Fleck has a saying and a very united culture that some would consider a cult doesn't mean it's wrong or even necessarily bad. That is just his way of doing it, and if you aren't bought in, you don't have to play at Minnesota or commit to Coach Fleck. Secondly, in the case that he is rushing players back from injury, if that is in fact going on, then yes, that is serious and that is not good. But ultimately, the players still have to be cleared, and the player can choose whether or not he wants to play. Obviously, if the head coach tells you to put on your helmet, you're probably going to do it. But Fleck wants to win games and keep his job, so I highly doubt that he's out there trying to get his star players or important players hurt and potentially hurt his program in the future. But actually, it looks like it's the way that he went about it that could get him into hot water, as the article goes more in depth. As they then talked about a former staffer. The article says, quote, "The former employee alleged Minnesota medical staffers illegally prescribed a drug, which was a powerful anti-inflammatory that reduces pain. The ex-staffer also alleged the school's athletic medical team violated NCAA independent medical care best practices." So now turning to that. If he did in fact tell his staff to illegally prescribe something to his players, then that right there could get him in huge trouble. I'm not exactly sure how that works or what the guidelines are in the NCAA, but I'm sure when it comes to the healthcare stuff and that side of things, that they're very strict, and out of everything I've read, that right there is the most serious thing that could actually end up doing some damage to him. Secondly, it's also somewhat questionable that he'd be doing that, as right there he would be crossing that line of doing something potentially wrong to get players back on the field quicker. It's one thing to rush a player to play when they're in pain, but it is another thing to go behind the scenes and do something against the rules to take away that player's pain so they can play. That right there is the most serious allegation, and there really is no defending that. Thirdly, to the idea that Fleck has a system to get out of drug tests and other allegations, well, in that case, it is wrong. There is no defending that, but to be fair, this is probably something that is widespread in every program, and if drug tests were taken more seriously in college football, then there'd be a lot more players kicked out of school and a lot more coaches fired. It's unfortunately one of those things that has seemingly been running rampant in college football and in sports and in general for a long time, so to fire a coach over this would honestly be absolutely ridiculous. Yes, PJ Fleck's row the boat stuff can get annoying, but there's nothing wrong with it. If he rushed players back from injury and created incentives and downplayed drug tests and allegations, then yes, that is bad, but more so he needs a warning, maybe should serve a suspension for a game or two, and should just be held more accountable. I don't think there needs to be a witch hunt over Coach Fleck, and while he is not my favorite coach in the college football world, honestly I think this is a little bit exaggerated, and if the Northwestern stuff didn't happen, then this would not even be front page news. One thing is for certain, we're probably going to find out some more details tomorrow, as when I'm recording this at about 8 o'clock on Wednesday, July 26th, we're a couple hours away from him taking the podium at Big Ten Media Days. I'm pretty sure he'll be asked about it, and if so, we'll get a statement from him, and maybe we'll get a little bit more insight to what the heck is going on. It's been quite the crazy few months for the Big Ten, as I guess Iowa was in some trouble back in March, and then recently we saw the Northwestern stuff, and now even Jim Harbaugh is facing a 4-game suspension to start out the 2023 season, as he apparently lied to NCAA investigators and went about things the wrong way. In terms of Minnesota's 2023 season, Fleck is going to have to figure it out. As I said earlier, he's going to have to find a new quarterback and running back, is going to have to replace most of his offensive line, and it's a tall task to replace one of those in general, and now he has to do it at arguably the 3 most important positions. There's also going to need to be a lot of help at the receiver spot, and I'm not informed enough to know how the defense will be, but after back-to-back seasons of winning 9 games, that could be in jeopardy this year, and Coach Fleck's job could even be in jeopardy if worse things come out, or if Minnesota decides they've had enough of this. It is also worth noting that there were some allegations in 2021 against him, and back during his time at Western Michigan, he apparently had some questionable antics, and I know head coach Jerry Kill was not very fond of Fleck taking over, and while there might be some people who personally don't like the guy or don't think he's the greatest moral dude in the world, at the end of the day, he should only be fired if he truly did break the rules and deserves to be fired. I don't think you should just fire someone because you don't like them or they're a little bit questionable. But that's just my opinion, and I'm a little bit more reserved, and I do like to wait and see a little bit more before I throw the stone. But what do you guys think? If you're a Minnesota or college football fan, what is your take on the PJ Fleck situation, and what are your thoughts? What do you think should happen, and what did I get right or wrong or miss? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.